Hey guys, so since I've been modding the Neville Goddard subreddit, I have been privy to all of the posts that come through there that don't get approved because they're repetitive or whatever. And it's been really interesting how many of the same types of questions come through there. And one of the big ones that I've seen just asked over and over and over and over again is how to deal with an anxiety problem when trying to become somebody who is consciously manifesting everything or deliberately manifesting everything. And recently there was a really well thought out, well written question about this that was posted and got a ton of great replies, really intelligent, well thought out, non-cheap replies. And so I want to link to that for any of you that are suffering from anxiety, or have an anxiety disorder, I guess. I don't know a lot about this. I've obviously experienced anxiety as a human. But I don't know if there's a big difference between an anxiety disorder and just your run-of-the-mill sort of severe anxiety that people experience. I would imagine that most anxiety comes from an actual source, and that people that have ongoing, people that are treated for ongoing anxiety probably have a reason that they're anxious. I'm not an expert on this, but obviously, just so that this video isn't 1 minute long, and to make it personal to me, I did have an experience, a period of pretty severe anxiety and panic attacks, which are, if you've never had one, they just come on suddenly and you can't really tell where they came from. And if you don't know what's happening, you might think you're having a heart attack or something, or stroke or something, and I had those for about a year when I was 33. I had just decided pretty firmly that I wasn't going to have kids. I never really wanted kids ever, but I just assumed, and my mom told me that eventually when I was in the right situation, or eventually like when, I was financially stable, that I would want kids. So I didn't worry about it. She told me I didn't want kids until I was 28. And then she had my brother, and then she had me. And so I just assumed, okay, well, that'll take care of itself. Didn't worry about it. And then, around 33, 34, that age, I was like, well, it's kind of time to shit or get off the pot with the kid thing. I better figure out what's going on here. I was in a relationship. It wasn't the right relationship, but it was a good relationship. If I had really wanted kids, that probably would have been the one that I had, the relationship I had kids in. And I just decided, it was pretty obvious to me. It wasn't a tough decision from a personal desire standpoint that I don't want kids. But there were other factors that went into that, because I was absolutely terrified of later finding that I wanted them and then I didn't have the opportunity anymore due to biology. But more specifically, I had this very sort of a soul-chilling fear of being old and alone, which is pretty much resolved at this point. At least I don't think about it, and when I do think about it, I just sort of assume, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, or I'll manifest what I want, or whatever. That's one of the things that are beautiful about realizing that you can influence what's going on, because it sort of, for me, relieves the fear of finding yourself in some dire situation with nothing you can do about it. There's always something you can do about it. But so what happened with me was I was in that period of time where I was going through this decision, and then pretty firmly decided I didn't want them, and was in the what am I going to do when I'm old phase. So, I ran through it rationally, and I was like, well, having kids doesn't guarantee you're not going to end up alone in a hospital when you're 85 or something. This is having kids is no guarantee of anything anyway. But that didn't really help me. It didn't really help anything. And then my aunt, who was my father's sister-in-law, so his brother's wife, she never had kids. My uncle died, so she was alone. She wasn't super close with any of us, and she didn't have any siblings. Her parents were both dead. So she was basically in the position that I feared. She was alone, lost her husband, just kind of by herself, and she did not handle it well. It was very sad to watch. You know, I was around to the degree I had always been around, which was like seeing her a couple times a year. We still did some holidays together and stuff, but she was just sort of like my fear personified. And then she got leukemia, and she got leukemia at the same time that my mom was having breast cancer. So I wasn't really available. It wasn't, we didn't have the type of relationship where I would necessarily be the person that stepped up into the role of like child, you know, surrogate child or whatever. And so I just kind of saw this from the periphery. My uncle's son, her stepson, lived far away and was the closest person, but you know, he wasn't around much because he had a job and a family. And I just kind of saw my fear play out. She was pretty much alone. She had to get caregivers, and, you know, ended up falling and having an incident and then ending up in the hospital where she never really recovered. And just having this happen, and it happened right at that time where I was deciding not to have kids, and seeing, you know, my mom going through cancer while she did have, well, she has 2 kids, but I was the one that did everything for her during that. It just sort of brought up this, I don't know, it was sort of an all the time underlying freaking out about the nature of, you know, this thing that in my mind I was eventually going to have to face, this like being alone and perhaps like going through what my aunt had just gone through and all this. And it was producing these, I was having panic attacks about it, you know, just, I had to leave. My ex's sister was getting married, and I was at her wedding shower, and I had to just get up and leave in the middle of it because I was absolutely just panicking. I had to leave. I had to flee. It was like, I've got to get out of here or I'm going to suffocate, that type of feeling. And so, I know people are dealing with this, and I've experienced it. I know people are dealing with this regularly. And for me, I knew the source. So, and maybe you know the source or maybe you don't. And even if you figure out what the source is, that's not necessarily going to fix it unless you're able to fix the way you view the thing that's causing the panic. And one of the things that helped me, I talked to my mom about this a few times while I was going through this. You know, and she said one thing, I don't remember what prompted this, but she said, you know, as you get older, your perspective shifts. You know, basically, you're not going to be looking at this from the same viewpoint you're looking at this at 33 when you're 63. You're going to have had life experience, and you're going to see it differently. You know, and I thought about it, and I thought, you know, this is sort of like a boogeyman that I've created off into the future. I don't know that this is going to happen. It certainly wouldn't be experienced the way I'm imagining it. You know, there might be some elements to it. It might really suck, but right now it's this far off future unknown, and that's making me freak out because it's the unknown that's making me freak out. And so her comment about, you know, your perspective changing, and you'll be more able to handle whatever's happening in your present moment. At that point, you'll be looking at it differently. That helped. And also what helped for me was, I don't know if this is relevant to anybody. If anybody else is going through this, it certainly will be. What started to, I think part of the panic was that I was still in the period of time where I could change my mind. Once I got a little older, in my mind, I was like, well, 36 or 37, and it's all over. Like, you can't really get pregnant then. I was totally wrong, obviously. But in my mind, that's what I thought. And so when I hit that age, it really died off a lot on its own because I was like, well, the decision's made. It's done now. I didn't realize you can still have babies. I could probably have a baby now if I wanted. But that really helped. And then when I had a period of time where it wasn't like I'm making this decision that may produce this horrible future, that really helped a lot. And then eventually what resolved all of it for me was just sort of getting to the point where I sat alone with myself, dealing with the unknown nature of everything here. And the unknowns just that, you know, that we'll never have the answers for while we're here about what this all is, and you know, and sort of accepting more and more that you're really always alone, and it's not a bad thing. You know, that was scary, but I just kind of sat alone with myself for a few weeks without really leaning on anybody for support outside of me, and just got used to the fact that things are okay. You know, just that, you know, some monster didn't appear in my immediate vicinity and devour me, when I just sat and accepted the fact that, you know, there's this is just a big question mark all over, all around. And you know, there's certain things you're just never going to know. And that's, you know, that's good. I mean, I think it's okay to just get to the point where you're like, I have some faith that this is all going to end up okay. This is all good. It's all good in the end. You know, if you don't believe that, I would start trying to convince yourself of that, because without it, if you're not sure if this whole thing is going to be okay unless you secure the right partner and have the perfect children and get the perfect, you know, I think you're going to bump up against that reality eventually, that all the things of the world are not going to save you from having to just get okay with not knowing and developing some faith that it's all good. So anyway, I'm going to link to that thread that was on Reddit. If you suffer from anxiety, even if you don't, I found it really interesting how some of the people described having moved past it. Especially if you look at that thread, if you go to that thread, make sure you read to the end, because I think my favorite comment in there was from somebody who commented late and wrote a lot about facing your fears and how that really fixes panic. And it's exactly, you know, I read that and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have described it the way this person did. I didn't do it the way this person did. This person basically repeatedly invited panic attacks and put themselves in situations where a panic attack would normally happen, and just tried to say, I'm going to face this. I'm going to go and have a panic attack right now so that it's not scary to me to have it anymore. That's not what I did, but I did face the fear by sitting there alone and just saying, you know what? If I end up old and alone in a nursing home, so what? So what? Then it'll suck and then I'll die. So what? Will that matter? Is that some significant thing? Will the world come to a screeching halt? Will it have ruined my entire life experience up to that point? No. Yes, I might have to go through something at some point that really sucks, and cross that bridge when I come to it and deal with it. I've dealt with things that suck in the past plenty of times, you know. And I also have this wonderful ability to change my mind about things and to see things differently and to intend for things to be different, which seems to produce them happening. So that's how I personally face this fear, and I love the way this person described how they faced theirs. So if you suffer from anxiety, I hope you will go read that thread. It really seemed to help the person who made the post, who was an experienced manifester still suffering from these things. So anyway, I hope that helps. Have a great day.